Live from Nashville, Tennessee, on Music Row, this is Hope for the Caregiver, the nation's #1 show for the family caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you more than 3 decades of experience to help you stay strong and healthy as you take care of someone who is not, and we are so glad you're with us. If you want to be on the show, the number is 877-655-6755, 877-655-6755. You can follow along at hopeforthecaregiver.com or on Facebook. We're live at Hope for the Caregiver. I don't know how much more simpler I can make it. It's Hope for the Caregiver. We're pretty serious about it because 65 million Americans are struggling with this right now, and we're on a mission to help strengthen those who are helping the infirmed, the mentally impaired, the disabled, the chronically ill, the elderly, folks who are pushing the wheelchair, folks who are standing in the hospital room corner, folks who are dealing with a family member who has mental illness or some way impaired. We're on a mission to help those individuals, and we're glad you're with us. Again, that's 877-655-6755. And when you call, guess what? They're going to route you in to the man himself, the Baron of the Board, the Sultan of Sound, the Earl of Engineering, the man who put the word care into karaoke. He is the Count of Mighty Disco, John Butler, everyone.
Oh, that one's good. That one's much better. I am all about putting the care in karaoke.
You ever done karaoke?
Oh, come on. I love karaoke.
Yes, I imagine you do.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a time when people can go act foolish, and
well, speaking of acting foolish, we had a very foolish thing happen today, a very sad thing happened today in Nashville, and we're going to jump right into that here in a minute. You've been seeing this all over the news, and the word is still coming out, and we'll get into that in just a moment. We have a caregiver tip. I had a caregiver tip of the day, which we always do, and it's brought to you by AARP of Tennessee, aarp.org/TN. And on our caregiver tip of the day, it's just some kind of practical thing that we offer for you as a caregiver right now. And today I changed it up a little bit, John, in light of what's happened.
Yeah.
And today I would like, for the caregiver tip of the day, I'd like to just tell you all, if you are a caregiver and you have somebody in your orbit who is mentally ill or in any way impaired, but particularly those of you with a mentally ill person who has some type of mental illness, please seek help for yourself, because I promise you it will disorient you to be in that kind of relationship. You will get pulled into all kinds of places that you would not normally think you would go. And you'll end up making very, very bad decisions that will harm you or your loved one or others. And mental illness is one of those things that it sucks. It has its own gravity.
Yeah.
It has its own gravity, and it will pull you into it and anyone around it into this thing. And what happened here in Nashville today, and you've been seeing on breaking news, is that this kid, not a kid, he's 29 years old, went in and shot up a Waffle House and killed 4 people with an assault rifle that was confiscated from him by the authorities. He's actually on the Secret Service's radar because he was up near the White House where he wasn't supposed to be. And then Illinois people got involved with it. They took his weapons and they gave it back to his father. And his father, in turn, gave it back to him. That's what they just said on the news. And so, and the kid obviously he went into the Waffle House naked.
Yeah.
At 3 a.m, and he went in there and he started shooting up the place. And so he's doing it with a weapon that had already been taken from him and then given to a family member who then turned around and gave it to him. And either the mental illness is not limited to one individual, or someone's judgment was really skewed.
Which can happen very easily.
Incredibly easy.
Yeah.
And that's why our caregiver tip of the day is, if you have an impaired loved one in your orbit, would you please seek professional help for yourself?
They may not be cooperative with any sort of therapy or help.
No,
or whatever.
they may not make it. They may not make it, but you have to.
Yeah.
And that's the deal, because as a caregiver, when you're dealing with something like this thing can go south so fast, and you would be amazed at the bad decisions that you will make when you're in the orbit of somebody who is circling the drain like that, mentally or physically. And so getting help for yourself looks like going to counseling, looks like support groups. If you don't know a good counselor, go to your doctor. 72% of caregivers do not see their own physician regularly. Okay? That's a time bomb. How is that a good thing? So if you will go to your doctor and say, Doc, I've got somebody in my life that I'm caring for, whether it's a child or parent or brother, sister, whatever, they're not well. And it's causing me a lot of stress, and I need somebody to talk to. Who do you recommend? That doctor should have a list of social workers, counselors, somebody that they can refer you to. If that doesn't work, call a pastor. Call somebody. But don't sit in isolation and allow this thing to fester on, because it will only get worse. It will not fix itself. You will suffer consequences of this emotionally and sometimes physically. But today is a perfect example of what can happen when somebody's not making bad decisions in the orbit of somebody who is mentally impaired.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to say it any better than that.
Well, it's not, you did a great job. That's like you said, you may not make it, or they may not make it, but you have to. That's a thing.
Look, everybody's going to start getting into gun control. Everybody's going to do that. The conversation's already started. I already heard it on the press.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. We're talking about the health of the caregiver.
They're all going to get into it. But somebody said, and we repeated it on this show, after the last tragedy like this, that the gun that will be used to perpetrate the next one is already in the hands of the killer. And guess what? It was. You can't get out in front of this if that's your thing, but you can try to look at all the folks that are involved taking care of somebody and offer them a path to safety. Now, they may not take the path. They may be just belligerently not taking it, but at least we give them a fighting chance. They're certain not to take it if you don't show it to them.
Yeah.
If they don't know it's there, I can promise you they won't take it. So give them a fighting chance by saying repeatedly, it's okay. Not only okay, it's imperative for you as a caregiver to seek professional help for yourself. You can become disoriented. Caregivers become disoriented in fear, obligation, and guilt, what I call the fog of caregivers. Fear, obligation, and guilt. And it's in that fear, obligation, and guilt that, just like if you're driving in a fog, you'll plow right into a tree and not know it until it's too late. You'll drive right off a cliff and take everyone you know with you. If you can help them slow down and help them have a path to safety, that's how you help someone. That's not coming up and say, well, we're going to pray for you, or, take care of yourself, or eat a nice meal, or whatever, get some rest. No, it's helping them get to safety. Sometimes that's physical safety, sometimes that's emotional safety, sometimes it's both. But they're never going to take it if you don't say anything. So any law enforcement officers that are listening right now, if you're called to somebody's home and there's a mentally impaired individual in it, please take an extra 15 seconds to look to that caregiver, that person who is making the phone call that probably got you there in the first place, and say, when's the last time you saw your doctor? This is stressful. It's okay for you to get counseling for yourself. If your doctor doesn't know what's going on with you, please tell your physician, and please ask for a referral to get counselors. We have some folks that we send people to, or we know some social workers or some way. Point these people to safety. You can't guarantee they're going to take it, but you give them a fighting chance if you give them information. And that this is where we are. And this is my little area of understanding in this issue. But as I see these things unfold all the time, we keep recirculating the same conversations.
Well, and the conversations that we have are there. The public sphere is going to do what the public sphere is going to do. But as a part of that, which is weird to say, you as someone who is laser focused on the needs of caregivers, see these things through a lens that others might not.
It's the only lens I have, but it's a good lens because I can
We can get you some bifocal.
I can promise you that there is, for every mentally impaired person out there who may unleash hell against society, there's a caregiver somewhere in their orbit who is absolutely bewildered and frustrated and pulling their hair out, struggling, despairing, messed up themselves. I promise you, there's somebody in the orbit. And if that caregiver goes down, then what happens to that impaired loved one and what's protecting them? Are those caregivers the last line of defense sometimes?
Oh, yeah. And
I think they are.
If we're going to have a comprehensive conversation about this,
that's all I ask.
Yeah.
And how much does this cost? Nothing. I remember doing an interview with someone, and they said, well, what about, legislation? And I said, well, we don't really need a bill to be passed. I think it's just a matter of just being aware and using the pulpits and the platforms you have. If you're a pastor, say something. If you're a teacher, say something. If you're a politician, say something. If you're a law enforcement officer, say something. But don't just sit there and...
If you got a bunch of Twitter followers.
Yeah. I mean, just say it's okay for caregivers to get help for themselves. How long did that take to say that? 6 seconds?
A little fire in you.
Well, that's true. It's okay. And I think sometimes caregivers are so wrapped up again in that fog, that guilt, that fear, obligation, and guilt. They think they feel guilty if they do something for themselves.
Even if it's eminently healthy.
And so I say to you, give them a fighting chance by pointing them to safety. This whole show is about helping the caregiver find a path to safety where they can catch their breath, take a knee, and then start developing healthy strategies for life from there. That is hope for the caregiver. That's not patting them on the back and say, brother, we're going to pray for you.
That's not a tuna casserole.
That is doing something that will have results. I promise you. Hey, listen, the number is 877-655-6755. This is Hope for the Caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger. We'll be right back.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or if you signed up for a plan you're not happy with, you still have a choice. MediShare is a healthcare sharing program. Hundreds of thousands of Christians are part of this. It can save you a lot. Typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. You can join MediShare anytime. It's easy to call and look into it. There's no pressure at all. And man, what a difference it can make. 855
Intro is clean.
25-SHARE. That's 855-25-SHARE.
Have you ever struggled to trust God when lousy things happen to you? I have. I'm Gracie Rosenberger, and in 1983, I experienced a horrific car accident leading to 80 surgeries and both legs amputated. I questioned why God allowed something so brutal to happen to me, but over time, my questions changed, and I discovered courage to trust God. That understanding, along with an appreciation for quality prosthetic limbs, led me to establish Standing with Hope. For more than a dozen years, we've been working with the government of Ghana and West Africa, equipping and training local workers to build and maintain quality prosthetic limbs for their own people. On a regular basis, we purchase and ship equipment and supplies. And with the help of inmates in a Tennessee prison, we also recycle parts from donated limbs. All of this is to point others to Christ, the source of my hope and strength. Please visit standingwithhope.com to learn more and participate in lifting others up. That's standingwithhope.com. I'm Gracie, and I am Standing with Hope.
Takes time, yes, it's hard to find, baby. Love takes time.
I don't want it to end, John. I love that song. Orleans.
I'm jamming out, man.
1979. Hey, this is Hope for the Caregiver. Welcome back. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you more than 3 decades of experience to help you stay strong and healthy as you take care of someone who is not. The number, if you want to be on the show, 877-655-6755. And next segment, we've got our Canadian caregiver correspondent.
Oh, she's my favorite.
Our classy Canadian caregiver correspondent, as you named her.
Oh, yeah.
Tracey Maxfield will be with us, and she's going to talk about depression. and her journey through this. I mean, she's been an RN for 35 years dealing with dementia care patients and so forth, and Alzheimer's patients. And she's going to talk about depression and what that does to the individuals, with patients and so forth. She's going to share her own experience with this journey.
There you go.
So that's great. And I'm heading to Rhode Island this week, John.
Again?
I'm going to be speaking up there. I've been to Rhode Island more in the last year than I've been in my entire life.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to getting back up there and see the folks. I just fly in and fly out kind of thing.
So you're not going to take the road to Rhode Island?
We're on the road to Rhode Island. I'm going to Quahog. Giggity, giggity. But I am looking forward to being with that. This is the Rhode Island Parent Information Network up there, and it's for special needs families. And love working with these folks. And also want to give a big shout out to you, John, because you're a dear fan out in Nova Scotia. Prince Edward Island.
Okay.
Every week.
Don't get those Nova Scotians
I know.
mixed
Every
up
week she is so faithful to send me a note to say how much she loves the show, and particularly you.
Oh, well, thank you.
She just loves you,
much.
John. So she's listening today up in Prince Edward Island. And, we've got all this Canadian influence here, and our station that in Minneapolis up in International Falls broadcast into the Canadian border.
Well, they're beloved around the world for good reason.
Well, they are, and so our station is able to go over the wall. We don't have a wall between us and Canada.
No, it's the longest undefended border in the world. Peter, okay.
All right, we've got our today's senior moment. And this is brought to you.
Every time you say that.
Today's senior moment, I named it myself. Today's senior moment, brought to you by Morning Point Senior Living and Memory Care Center. And it's kind of a different one today.
Okay.
I called an audible. I do that a little bit.
You called an audible.
I did at the line of scrimmage because I was going to go with something different.
Oh, it's a sports analogy. I'm sorry.
Thank you. But I went to a friend's house, as I do every Sunday afternoon after church, and I go see a friend of ours who is dealing with her husband has dementia, and it's been kind of a journey. And the house, they have a pretty large housing that this thing is kind of collapsing in on themselves. And she's thinking, I want to downsize this house. And she was telling me some of the things that went wrong with the house. And it's a 21-year-old home, so it's not that old, but it's a lot for a lady who's taking care of a husband with dementia, and she has full-time care there at the house and so forth.
Yeah.
And I found myself saying to her something I'd never said to anybody else before, but it made sense to her. I said, because it had a plumbing problem that went wrong. There was a leak somewhere. They had to replace an air conditioning unit and all that kind of stuff. And I said, how about this? As you are prepared, I said, don't make any snap decisions, but maybe go ahead and spend, several $100s and get a good house inspector to come in and just go through the house and find all the little things that are problems or could be problems. So you'll have a nice comprehensive list. And so they won't sneak up on you, and you'll have, because they just had a big basement problem where the sump pump was messed up and everything else, and water was shooting everywhere. And it was a mess. So I thought, let's go ahead and get a house inspector, and there are good ones out there, and you can always get a referral in your community. And there's lots of folks that can do that. Good real estate agencies and so forth can give a referral, and come out there and just make a list.
Yeah. And that way you'll get what is it? What is measured is managed.
And you're not hit with surprises.
Yes.
You know what's coming, and you know the things. And then she wants to downsize the house eventually because it's a big house. And she said, I'm not going to be able to keep up all this house. And I mean, and things are getting a little bit close, as far as an issue that they're dealing with as far as the end of life. And she said, I don't want to have to go through the whole thing and figure out what's wrong. And I said, well, get a house inspector to come in and take a look at it. And then you have a list to go through, and you don't have to do it all in one day.
Yeah.
But there may be some gutter problems that are starting to get some wear on them. There may be a flooring issue somewhere, some plumbing in a bathroom that you don't use very often, and she's not going to, it's on the second floor that she's not seeing.
You need to wall off the east wing or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I mean, little things like that. But if you have a house inspector go through, you've got a very comprehensive list that you know what's going to happen. There's no surprises. And then you can hire, a maintenance firm or so forth to come in and start taking care of some of these things, and it takes that all off of her. So I thought, well, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and we like things on autopilot.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're a caregiver, when's a good time for surprises?
Your birthday.
When's a good time for the water heater to blow up? And all those kinds of things are things that help reduce the drama. You never know the pain that you're saved from.
Isn't that neat?
You know, you don't know. You only know the pain that you experience. And so it's hard to see the value in things that never happened to you. But the goal for this is to live a calmer, healthier, and even more joyful life. And you can live a calmer life if you know that your house situation is managed well. And this is brought to you by our friends at Morning Point Senior Living and Memory Care Centers and at morningpoint.com. And that's point with an E. Take a look. Take a look at what they're doing and see all the great things that they have to offer. Wonderful friends of this show, and we're glad they're with us. Hey, the number is 877-655-6755. This is Hope for the Caregiver. This is Peter Rosenberger. We're glad you're with us. We'll be right back.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or if you signed up for a plan you're not happy with, you still have a choice. MediShare is a healthcare sharing program. Hundreds of thousands of Christians are part of this. It can save you a lot. Typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. You can join MediShare anytime. It's easy to call and look into it. There's no pressure at all. And man, what a difference it can make. 855-25-SHARE. That's 855-25-SHARE.
Have you ever struggled to trust God when lousy things happen to you? I have. I'm Gracie Rosenberger, and in 1983, I experienced a horrific car accident leading to 80 surgeries and both legs amputated. I questioned why God allowed something so brutal to happen to me, but over time, my questions changed, and I discovered courage to trust God. That understanding, along with an appreciation for quality prosthetic limbs, led me to establish Standing with Hope. For more than a dozen years, we've been working with the government of Ghana and West Africa, equipping and training local workers to build and maintain quality prosthetic limbs for their own people. On a regular basis, we purchase and ship equipment and supplies. And with the help of inmates in a Tennessee prison, we also recycle parts from donated limbs. All of this is to point others to Christ, the source of my hope and strength. Please visit standingwithhope.com to learn more and participate in lifting others up. That's standingwithhope.com. I'm Gracie, and I am Standing with Hope.
Welcome back to the show for caregivers, about caregivers, hosted by a caregiver. This is Hope for the Caregiver. We're glad that you're with us. If you want to be on the show, 877-655-6755. We're here to help you take it easy. And thank you for that count of Mighty Disco.
Hey.
Just got that Fonzie thing going here. Hey, as usual, as is our custom on this show, once a month we will have our classy Canadian caregiver correspondent call in from British Columbia. This is Tracey Maxfield. She is a nurse of 35 years where she has taken care of dementia patients, Alzheimer's patients, and she brings a considerable amount of experience. Today, she's going to talk about a subject that affects so many of us, and that is depression, her own journeys with it, journeys that she's seen other folks go with it, and what to do about it, and how she was able to escape the rabbit hole, which is the name of her book, called Escaping the Rabbit Hole, which is a great title for a book. Tracey, welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
Well, you know, I'm just doing great. Thank you for asking. And how are you doing?
Very busy. The book was published just about a month ago. The release party was last Friday, and so just dealing with some of the media and just lots of things going on with people wanting to talk about the book.
Well, and we do too, and we want to get right into that. Talk a little bit about this book and depression, how your journey has been with it, what you've witnessed with other folks that you've worked with as patients and families in this area, and then offer some tips on it.
Sure. So, obviously, I have depression. I wrote the book mainly because I really wanted people to try and understand that what they were going through was actually normal. So I experienced, in layman's terms, a really bad nervous breakdown back in August 2015. In medical terms, it's called an acute depressive episode, and I likened it to falling down the rabbit hole. The darkness was so oppressive, and it was just so absolutely exhausting, I couldn't function. And along with the depressed mood and the anxiety and the tremendous sadness and crying and emotional pain, I also experienced physical pain. It felt like I was encased in cement, and I could hardly walk. I was in so much pain, and I felt so heavy. And I read a number of books about depression, and as a nurse, you've dealt with a lot of people with depression, and yet no one had ever told me about this tremendous physical pain that you've encountered too. And so as I started to heal and met more people, I decided that I would never want anyone to go through what I would go through, because you think you're losing your mind. You think that there's other stuff going on, that this can't possibly be depression. And so I started a blog, which eventually became the book, and that I wanted people to understand that depression is much more than emotional illness. It's a cognitive and it's a physical illness. It really is the whole person. And so for those with depression, I wanted to let them know that they are not alone, that what they are going through is part of the illness and that they will get better, that there is hope. But people looking after those with depression, or even just anyone interested in learning more, I wanted the book to give them some support and some education of what to expect, what they can do to encourage and support those that have depression.
Let me ask you a quick question and back up just
Sure.
for a second. What kind of pain did you have? Was it headaches or what? What was the pain that was associated with this? This is the first I've heard of it having physical pain with this.
The pain, it feels like every bone, every muscle, every joint in your body is weighed down with cement. And in the book, I liken it to, I woke up in the morning and felt like someone had encased my feet in cement and put cement shoulder pads on me. And the pain is so severe that in the beginning, you almost feel like you're crawling to get somewhere, because it's intense, it's excruciating, it's exhausting.
So it's like some kind of oppressive weight just hanging on you. I'm just pushing you down. It's
like it permeates into your cells. It becomes you. And it's when you see people, you can see that they're literally dragging themselves. It's like they're dragging weights behind them, but weights that are on them. And it's a plodding, like just getting from A to B is torture. And as I went through this depression, I discovered that it's actually normal. The more and more people I spoke to identified that they were also going through that. And I just wish that more books, medical books especially, had been more open about discussing that.
Do you feel like now that you've experienced this firsthand, I mean, you've really wrestled with this, and you're a medical professional. I mean, you've got 35 years as a nurse. You understand these things. Now, switch that to the prism that you look at with folks who are wrestling with this from a patient standpoint, whether they have dementia or Alzheimer's, because that's your area of expertise, and the ones who care for them. There's an old saying that if you got it, you can spot it. Do you feel like that you can see this now on others much more clearly who are struggling with patients who have dementia and Alzheimer's and so forth?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you've probably heard it. It's not uncommon for many, many caregivers to experience some level of depression. And the exhaustion and the feeling of just so tired and so weighed down, that is a component of depression, and that is adding to everything else that they're trying to deal with. And I think that's why it's so important for them to self-care, to regularly see their doctor and talk about what's going on, and to share their experiences and their journey with others. And that's why your show is so good, in that it opens the door to those people to come and phone you and say, this is what I'm going through. Is this normal?
I think that's the thing that we get into as caregivers, is we're so isolated that we don't think what we're going through is normal, and it frightens us to expose that. And you coming on here and sharing your own journey with this as a healthcare professional and just as an individual who, as a patient who has struggled with this, it bolsters up the courage of folks to come through and get help. One of the things we talked about in our caregiver tip of the day earlier this hour was seeing your own doctor, getting some help professionally for yourself.
Absolutely.
And yet so many caregivers will not do this. They will not go see their own doctor. They think they're just going to white knuckle it, get their loved one through this, whatever. Maybe they're going to just say, well, we'll tough it out for 5 years until, mom or dad dies, and then we'll worry about the rest of it. And this is what compounds the problem. And so are you meeting, as you expose this in your own life to others, how are you being received with this?
Actually, the medical team that actually attended the book release party were very grateful that it's becoming a very open topic, and that it's a very raw depiction of what happened. I pull no punches. I tell the good, the bad, and the ugly side of it, but also show that you can work through it and there is hope. I've been invited to go to middle schools to talk to teenagers who are struggling with depression, mainly because of the stigma, and for them to know that, this is normal, what they're going through, that they can heal, that we can help them. Caregivers, it's exactly the same, regardless of their age. If they're dealing with a terminal illness, an Alzheimer's, a dementia, or even just a physical debilitating illness, depression can weigh them down to the point that their own health will be so severely compromised that committing to 5 years is going to result in them going into hospital and not being well enough to even enjoy their life after they've cared for the loved one.
What was the trigger for you that said, when you raised your hand and said, I got to get some outside help? I mean, you're smart, educated, you know these things, you're a medical professional, you've been around it. What was the trigger for you that said, enough's enough, I got to get some help?
When I counted out pills on the kitchen counter and thought that this was the only way I could take away my pain, and I actually ran and jumped in the car and just drove to get away from that. But that's when I realized
you'd hit bottom at that point.
I'd hit absolute bottom, and I needed to go and see my doctor and get medications and just get some help to work through this.
Tracey, there are people listening all over the country to this show and into Canada and other places. And there's somebody right now who is at that point. They are so stressed out. They are so discouraged. And what you're doing by just opening up your own heart to share this is powerful. It truly is. And I'm very grateful that you're willing to be that brutal and raw with us, because that's what it takes. It takes us sharing our own pain like this to let other folks know that they're not alone, that they're not way out in Gitchy Goomy land. That's a Southern expression I say here, by the way. And that there is help available. Let me ask you something. When people want to see more about you, Tracey, you've got a website now. I've been pushing you for a long time to get your website.
Well, it was suggested that I get one for the book.
It was not just suggested. It was almost demanded of you, Tracey.
Yes. And so I now have a website, www.traceymaxfield.com, and part of it is dedicated to the book, and all about depression and the information. But there's also another part which is all about dementia care, and I have my 27 articles that I published last year on there. And also anyone can write in and leave a note with a question or a request that I can respond to. And so I believe education, it helps us make safe and informed decisions, and I want to encourage people. Mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of, and similarly with dementia, depression, do not go through this alone.
Good words on that, Tracey.
Absolutely not.
It's Tracey Maxfield, and that's Tracey with the E, Tracey.
EY.
Maxfield, I before E, except after C, John.
That's it.
TraceyMaxfield.com. And
That's me.
please go take a moment to look at this. Get a copy of this book. You can order it today. It's a wonderful book that Tracey has put together. It's brutally frank. And that's what we need as caregivers, is to come together and just open up our chest in this safe environment. That's what we're doing on this show. We're so glad. Tracey, as always, I thank you for this, and I will see you next month on the show.
Sounds good.
All righty. Hey, listen, thank you so much. By the way, John.
Yo.
In my 3 decades as a caregiver, 3 decades, I've spent my share of nights in a hospital trying to sleep on the hospital furniture. You ever done that?
Oh, yeah.
Hospital furniture for the family is not known to be comfortable.
No, it is. Well, there's an economic reason for that.
Well, there is, and I've done it in waiting rooms, fold out cots, chairs, and even the floor. And as caregivers, we've got to sleep in some uncomfortable places, but we don't have to be miserable. We don't have to be miserable. And so I want you to think about what we're doing in my home. With pillows. Now, pillows. And don't think pillows aren't important, because they are. When Jacob left to flee Esau, he ended up on the way, and he stopped at, I think it was Bethel, and he used a rock as a pillow. But we don't have to. We don't have to use a rock as a pillow. We use pillows from mypillow.com. Mike Lindell sent me some of these things. These are wonderful pillows.
Oh,
and they are great. They got this patented interlocking field that adjusts to your sleep needs. And for caregivers, we have individual sleep needs, and they get ramped up significantly when you're sitting in a hospital recliner or a chair in a waiting room and so forth. And, I never liked taking my pillows to the hospital. Never, because I thought, I'm going to bring it home, and I'm thinking, how do you get it clean? How do you get the hospital out of the pillow? But with my pillow, you can throw them in the washer and dryer.
Hey, right on.
And so it takes care of that. 10-year warranty, not to go flat. 10-year warranty. They're guaranteed not to go flat. There's 60-day money-back guarantee, and they are made in the USA. That is a wonderful thing. And if you go to mypillow.com right now, type in the promo code. Guess what it is, John? Caregiver.
I thought it was going to be Rosenberger.
It's not. All right. No, it's Caregiver. Type in the promo code Caregiver at mypillow.com. Get 50% off the 4-pack, which includes 2 premium pillows and 2 go anywhere. And guess what? We caregivers, we go anywhere. And you'll also receive a discount on everything else on the website. mypillow.com, promo code Caregiver, or write this down, 800-946-2379. 800-946-2379, promo code Caregiver. Come on, let's get a good night's rest. That's important for us as caregivers. Hey, this is the nation's #1 show for the family caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, and I'm glad you're with us. We'll be right back.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or if you signed up for a plan you're not happy with, you still have a choice. MediShare is a healthcare sharing program. Hundreds of thousands of Christians are part of this. It can save you a lot. Typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. You can join MediShare anytime. It's easy to call and look into it. There's no pressure at all. And man, what a difference it can make. 855-25-SHARE. That's 855-25-SHARE.
Have you ever struggled to trust God when lousy things happen to you? I have. I'm Gracie Rosenberger, and in 1983, I experienced a horrific car accident leading to 80 surgeries and both legs amputated. I questioned why God allowed something so brutal to happen to me, but over time, my questions changed, and I discovered courage to trust God. That understanding, along with an appreciation for quality prosthetic limbs, led me to establish Standing with Hope. For more than a dozen years, we've been working with the government of Ghana and West Africa, equipping and training local workers to build and maintain quality prosthetic limbs for their own people. On a regular basis, we purchase and ship equipment and supplies. And with the help of inmates in a Tennessee prison, we also recycle parts from donated limbs. All of this is to point others to Christ, the source of my hope and strength. Please visit standingwithhope.com to learn more and participate in lifting others up. That's standingwithhope.com. I'm Gracie, and I am Standing with Hope.
Welcome back to the show for caregivers about caregivers. This is Hope for the Caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you 3 decades of experience to help you stay strong and healthy as you take care of someone who is not. We've had a great conversation today, a lot of things going on. We talked about our caregiver tip of the day, which is to get some help for yourself. Please get some help for yourself as a caregiver. Professional help. Call your doctor. Set up an appointment and say, look, doc, I'm under a lot of stress. I need a referral to somebody that can help me sort through some of these things. Go to a support group.
Especially if you've got someone that you're caring for that is
mentally ill.
Yeah.
It's today of all days. That's the day to please. It is imperative. That loved one you have may not make it, but you have to, because if you go down, who's standing between them and others? And that's the hard reality that this community has learned today in Nashville. And so, and it's not going to stop. This won't be the last. And we got to give caregivers a fighting chance by helping them see that it's important for them to get help for themselves. We also talked about our today's senior moment, brought to you by the folks at Morning Point, and that was about getting a home inspector to come in and just look at your home and see all the things that are teetering on the edge of needing some work, so that you're not overwhelmed when things just blow up. You know, when you have pipes that blow up, or maybe you've been living in one part of the house and the upstairs bathrooms aren't getting looked at very much.
And it might not be you. It might be mom.
It may be your parents' house and they're looking at downsizing, or your mother's home, your father's home, whatever. The roof or whatever, just things that you don't inspect very often. Get a professional in to inspect it so that you have a list of what's going on and there are no surprises. And that's part of planning. And then my book, Hope for the Caregiver, which is available wherever books are sold, hopeforthecaregiver.com. We have 4 sections of the book, and part 4 is called Planning. Proverbs 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty.
Oh.
That's a good word. And that's,
I believe it's the good word.
It is the good word. It is. and you don't want to just have to be knee-jerk reacting to everything. Okay.
Decisions made in haste are not usually done.
And take it from somebody who has done a lot of knee-jerk reaction. And speaking of knees, by the way, we always need prosthetic limbs to donate to Standing with Hope. Standing with Hope is the presenting sponsor of this show. You've heard Gracie's ads throughout the show talking about this ministry. We collect used prosthetic limbs from around the country, and local inmates at a prison run by our friends at Core Civic do this wonderful program where inmates disassemble the limbs for us so we can recycle all the parts, like the foot, the pylon, the knees. See that? See how I tied that in, John?
Yeah,
See how I did that? See?
Yeah,
And I'm a professional, folks. Don't try this by yourself. Safety first, kids. Safety first. So we take all these parts, we send them over to West Africa. We're getting ready to send a pallet of supplies over there. I just talked to the guys this week, and I've actually
we're doing foot and leg puns, not mouth puns. Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pallet. I see what he did there. You see, folks, that's why I host the show.
Oh,
John,
cut me, sir.
John, I've told you, when the Q-tip meets resistance, you got to stop. You got to stop, John.
I'll keep that in mind.
Oh, John, I love you. But we if you know somebody who's got a prosthetic limb, I was at a funeral for a friend, and I was talking to the funeral director the other day, and they're having a team meeting this week to talk to all the people it's a big funeral home there in Kentucky, because they get family members that come in, they have a prosthetic limb, they don't know what to do with it. But we do. Standingwithhope.com. HopeForTheCaregiver.com, and you can see right there on the website how to donate this. You just ship it in. If there's a shoe on the foot, please send the other shoe. We have a lot of mixed matched shoes, so please send the other shoe, and we will make sure that all this thing gets properly disassembled so that we can recycle these parts. Now, we'll build a brand new socket for the patient over in West Africa, but we can reuse the screws, the adapters, all this stuff. Inmates at a local facility working with us to help provide the gift that keeps on walking. StandingWithHope.com. Hey, listen, we're out of time. Got to go. It just the show just flies by, John.
Yeah, it was a good one today.
It is. Well, as opposed to what, John?
Hey, I didn't say anything.
I tell you, it's a tough crowd, tough crowd. Hey, I am Peter Rosenberger. There's more to follow. Next week, we'll see you, but go to HopeForTheCaregiver.com right now to see more about the book, more about the show, more about what we're doing to help strengthen you as a family caregiver. Healthy caregivers make better caregivers. Today's a great day to start being a healthy caregiver. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.